So I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is where Pat Oliphant lives. I moved here from Austin
Mm.
about 10 years ago, and it turned out Pat Oliphant was a neighbor of mine. He lived a block away. Uh,
Wow.
I met him on a Christmas Eve at his house in Santa Fe, where he was having a party, and some friends of his invited us to come along, and we met them. It was a fun party to be in. There was all sorts of interesting people. David Byrne from the Talking Heads was there.
Mm.
Terry Allen, who's in our movie, was there. All sorts of interesting people, and um, and then in the weeks that followed, um, I be I got to know Pat, and he was only a block away, so I would drop into his house, and we would just hang out, and then the trigger moment about making a film about him came. I originally I own a movie theater in Santa Fe, and I wanted to do short 5-minute portraits of the interesting people who live in Santa Fe. There's so many of them. And so I'd done one about this guy, Forrest Fenn, and we showed in our movie theater before the movies. And I wanted to do one of Pat. So I came and uh, we sat down for a filmed interview. And as we got into it, and as I learned more about his career, um, I realized then that this needed to be something much more than a 5-minute portrait piece. And so I um, asked if they would be okay, they being Pat and his wife Susan, with me making a feature documentary film about him.
Mhm.
And they agreed, and then we started doing this. This was 6 years ago.
Well, Bill and I have known each other for a long time. Uh, and I'm in the film business as an editor and also a filmmaker.
Mm.
And Bill had showed me an early cut of the film that it was pretty good. It had all the bones there.
Mhm.
Some great interviews. They had gotten a hold of some terrific archival footage from the Oliphant Archive held at UVA, and it was pretty good. But I just saw that it could be better. Bill said, "What do you think?" And I gave him my notes, and then he sat on it for a while because it's a lot to make a film, and then to
Right.
go in and do more and more is a big lift. And then I think COVID came around and you kind of lost some momentum shooting interviews with your editor too. And then you asked me to join the team and come on essentially as a post producer, kind
Mhm.
of finishing up. And with my kind of editing and filmmaking background, um, I just had a bunch of ideas. Always thought that there was a great film in this
Yes.
and that this could be a film that could be a theatrical film, that could be a festival film, and that could get some eyeballs on it and really be engaging. I saw potential there. So
Mm.
yeah, that was when I came on.
Well, I think as we say in the film, I think what really drove Pat was his innate skill as an artist, as a drawer, and his dad was a draftsman
Mhm.
for the Australian government, and he was kind of a pretty much a loner. I've met some of his friends from Australia when he was a kid, he was very much a loner, and I think that he just became somewhat obsessed with the art of drawing and then cartooning early on when, as we point out in the film, he got a job at the Adelaide in the two newspapers in Adelaide, the one owned by Murdoch and then the other one the competition, and so I don't know that I would say that Australia had anything to do, other than I will say this, and he does mention this in the film as well. Uh, the stuff, the way he was drawing, the cartoons he was drawing in Adelaide when he was working for those newspapers was a very different style of cartooning than what was being drawn in the United States at that time. So I think that being coming from a place where he was not influenced by what was happening around him in the United States probably did have an impact on him coming in and being so impactful when he did come because he was drawing in a way that people hadn't seen before in this country.
Right.
And if I may add that, Pat early on showed that he was a maverick. He embraced, we tell the story about Punk, his kind of alter ego and
Hmm.
being this penguin that washed up on the shore. And he totally embraced that as like, I'm going to say what I'm going to say.
Hmm.
And I think part of what just knowing my ex-wife is Australian, so knowing
Hmm.
Australia comes from British culture, but it's a little more kind of, we're doing our own thing, but it's not American. It's like it's got tall poppy syndrome. Don't pop ahead. Don't try to stick out from anyone else, or else we'll cut you down. And Pat was like, forget that. I want to go and do my own thing and say what I want to say. And and he's like, if anything, to me, Australia was an inspiration for him to get the hell out of there.
Yeah, I do think it makes a difference, and I think he was the first cartoonist um, to do that, to have a alter ego character that could speak his own, give his own opinions about things. I think that sort of that method was so impactful, important to how powerful his cartoons were to be that I think if he had not, thought to do that, it's hard to know, but I think that he would not have had the impact that he did because that punk influence, the punk commentary is such a big part of so many of his cartoons. So there's no way he could have achieved the greatness that he has achieved, I
Hmm.
think, without uh, doing that. And he found that voice early on while he was in Australia. Well, Hunter Thompson is a great example, and they were good friends. We and Grant Oliphant, who appears throughout the film as kind of a narrator of it, remembers going to Hunter Thompson's ranch and shooting guns at his ranch outside of Aspen. So they were kindred spirits, uh,
Hmm.
Pat Oliphant and Hunter S. Thompson, and Terry Allen is another one. Terry Allen is in our film a uniquely celebrated country musician um, who, does everything from, you know, uh, country songs to operas
Right.
and books, and is a painter as well and a sculptor. That is another kindred spirit
Right.
of Pat Oliphant. So he's attracted to those, few special artists, friends that he's made, lifelong friendships with.
Hmm.
Um, someone like Maureen Dowd, who's this uniquely wonderful columnist for the New York Times. And before
Right.
that, I think she was with Newsweek or Time Magazine. And then before that, the Washington Star with Pat. I mean, she and Patrick for all of these years have had this remarkably warm and close relationship. So he's just attracted to spirits that speak their mind without fear of consequence. Maureen Dowd, Terry Allen, Hunter Thompson are certainly qualify. So this is an example where Paul's influence on this film really made such a difference. I was hesitant to go into his family life as much as we did,
Mm,
and in the sense that because I am the person that is dealing with Pat and his wife Susan. They're my friends, they're my neighbors. They entrusted me to tell this story, and so
mm,
I'm torn with, well, I want to tell a story that's authentic and that's humanizing, of course, but I also don't want to tell a story that is going to result in them being very disappointed in
mm,
what I said. So, when we get into his first wife and his three children that he had with her, and then the breakup of the marriage, and the real sadness about the youngest daughter, Suzanne, whom we interviewed for the film.
mm,
By the way, we interviewed her in Arizona. She was one of the last interviews, and it was at a nudist RV camp where she was staying with
mm,
her boyfriend at the time. That's just a funny aside. Um, the fact that he left his first family in the way that he did was sort of a harsh reality of his humanness. And so
mm,
it ended up making the movie, I think, so much more powerful than if we had just simply told a story about this guy's remarkable career. Because that's what, of course he had this remarkable career, but if we don't really look under the covers to see uh, the human foibles of the man, then you don't really, I think, have a story that resonates with an audience like this one seems to resonate with an audience from what we've seen so far. And so that was an important part of this movie to tell the story in Grant's words, as well about the importance of his mom, Hendrika, and what a adventurer she was to come over with her kids, when they were young to America and not know anything about the place. Uh, she made a huge difference in his life. And I think that shows um, in the film. And it's also, we're able to show in the film that there is some reconciliation among everyone, the kids. There's not, there's forgiveness, there's understanding, there's humanity. And I don't know if that really answered the question. Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at some of the cartoons that we highlight in the film, cartoons where he's making fun of the Catholic Church about the scandal around pedophilia, he
mm,
was the first one to take on the Catholic Church, the first cartoonist in the country to do that. He was taking on, the Israel's, policies of Israel relative to Gaza 25 years ago. The same
right.
issues that are here today, he was calling them out. And now, and we point this out in the film too, there are like some unwritten rules about what a cartoonist can or cannot do about the state of Israel, making fun of the state of Israel. Well, he broke all those rules. He had no rules. And being independent allowed him to be courageous and honest and authentic. And really, at the end of the day, he's a courageous, honest, authentic guy. He is who he is. And he's also got a great sense of humor, and he's a brilliant artist. And I don't think there'll ever be someone like him. And he came at a time where he could have the impact that he did, and his time, was it was a perfect time for a person like Pat Oliphant to come along.
Well, they told me to wrap it up. Thank you so much for your time, Bill and Paula. I had a good time talking to you. Great.
Okay, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.